The janitor wasn't supposed to be in that room. Not at that hour, not during a board meeting prep, and certainly not near the prototype documents spread out like sacred scriptures on the glass table. Yet there he was, Elias Berger, kneeling on cold tiles with nothing but a worn-out rag and silence for company. The kind of silence that wrapped itself around the walls like judgment. He didn't flinch when the door clicked open behind him, nor did he look up when the voice sliced through the stillness like a scalpel. You have 5 minutes to explain why you're trespassing in a restricted wing. Calm, female, precise. Elias slowly stood, stretching out knees that had seen better days, and replied without looking at her. Then I'll only use one. I clean where things break. Lena Walker wasn't used to being ignored, especially not by someone with no badge clearance and a mop. She stepped forward, her heels ticking on the tile with sharp rhythm. The hallway lights caught the silver pin on her lapel. Executive Director. Her name was whispered across meetings, respected and feared. But in that moment, as she stared at Elias's back, she felt oddly unseen. You shouldn't be in here, she repeated, less for him, more for herself. Elias finally turned. His shirt was faded, his eyes the kind that had seen too much and spoke too little. Then let me finish cleaning and disappear again, like I always do. She should have ordered security. Instead, her eyes drifted to the coffee stain beneath the conference table, still fresh, spreading across pages filled with sensitive AI ethics protocols. What's your name? She asked, arms crossed, voice curious despite herself. Elias, he said, reaching into his back pocket, not the one with the rag. He pulled out a napkin, folded neatly, the edges slightly creased. Without ceremony, he placed it on the table and turned away. Nobody thinks about cleaning the thinking, he muttered. They just want clean results. And then he walked out, no badge, no explanation, just the quiet confidence of someone who knew he'd be remembered. Lena stared at the napkin like it was a detonator. She unfolded it slowly. Inside, 3 lines written in rough, almost childlike handwriting. Logic is easy. Mercy is not. I know where to start. The next morning, Lena's assistant found her already in the office, sipping coffee she hadn't tasted. Her mind hadn't left that napkin all night. Do we have a full roster on the night shift cleaners? She asked casually. Her assistant blinked. Yes. East Sector includes Elias Berger. Single father. No infractions on file. Bit of a loner. Lena's fingers tightened around the cup. Schedule him for a compliance walkthrough tonight. I want to observe how he handles document sanitation protocols. The assistant hesitated. He's janitorial. Lena glanced up, eyes unreadable. So was the rag that wiped your panic puke off the floor last quarter. But it got the job done. That evening, Elias arrived at the West Wing, only to find the lights already on red flag in his internal system of controlled routines. As he rounded the corridor, he spotted Lena, standing by a sealed vault door, arms crossed like a gatekeeper to secrets no one was supposed to ask about. There's a mess inside, she said without preamble. Elias looked around. This place is spotless. Not that kind of mess, she replied. The new behavioral module failed. Again, the system misread a stress scenario and recommended isolation over de-escalation. Elias leaned on his mop like it was a walking stick. Sounds like the machine's learning from people. She narrowed her eyes. Tell me something, Elias. You wrote that napkin, didn't you? He said nothing, but the silence between them, thick with something unspoken, answered for him. And Lena, for the first time in years, found herself unsure whether she was talking to a janitor or a ghost who had come back to fix what he once tried to build. Lena didn't sleep that night. She stared at the napkin under her desk lamp for hours, tracing the words over and over like they were written in code. Logic is easy. Mercy is not. I know where to start. Who was this man? She'd been briefed on every department head, every engineering lead, every security analyst. But no one had ever mentioned a janitor with eyes like war stories and hands that folded wisdom into cafeteria napkins. By 7 a.m., she had a full printout of his personnel file. Sparse, efficient, bachelor's in cognitive computing, incomplete graduate research in moral algorithms. Then nothing. A 10-year gap followed by employment in maintenance. No notes, no commendations, no complaints. Just silence. The kind you don't notice until it starts echoing. By noon, she was in the basement break room. Elias sat at the end of a plastic table with a coffee he never seemed to drink. Across from him was Tomas, the facility's veteran night custodian, whose wrinkled hands moved rhythmically over a half-finished crossword. "You never told me you had a background in AI," Lena said. No greeting, no preamble, just fire. Elias barely blinked. "You didn't ask." Tomas chuckled softly, but didn't look up. "Told you someone would find you eventually," he murmured. Elias ignored that. "I'm not here to build anymore. I'm here to clean." Lena folded her arms. "No, you're here because you saw something break and wanted to fix it. I need you to do that again, only this time, with the machine." He stared at her like she was the one speaking in riddles now. "You don't get to ask that of me," he said slowly. "Not after what this place took from me." Lena's voice softened. "What happened, Elias?" He didn't answer, not with words. Instead, he pulled a key card from his back pocket, dusty, cracked, no longer active, and placed it on the table. The name on it was barely legible, but the title still shimmered faintly. Lead Cognitive Designer, Morality Threading Division. Lena felt the bottom fall out of her chest. She suddenly remembered a whisper, a name from years ago, that guy who walked away after the incident. A scandal buried under NDAs and emergency board votes. A crash in the system's empathy feedback loop. A small girl involved. No one spoke of it. Now she was sitting across from the ghost of it. That night, Elias stood alone in the data server room, breathing in the cold pulse of the machines. He wasn't supposed to be there. Again, but the terminal blinked, waiting. He pulled out a flash drive, one he hadn't touched in a decade, and loaded a ghost framework, Echo Layer 7. It wasn't beautiful code, but it felt things. He remembered how it had once responded to an emergency training sim by suggesting hugging protocol instead of initiating lockdown. They laughed at him until it made a child stop crying. The machine hadn't been perfect, but it had hesitated, and sometimes that pause was all it took to be human. He adjusted the line slightly. It needed to be less romantic, more useful, but it was a start. He hit execute. Nothing exploded. No alarms. Just breath. The next morning, Lena was pulled into a board meeting she hadn't asked for. A printout sat in front of every member, stamped in red. Unauthorized access. Internal prototype ethics rewrite. Someone had flagged Elias's edits and escalated it to security. Dorian, head of compliance, slammed the table. "We have janitors rewriting our moral compass now." Another board member chimed in. "If this leaks, we're finished." Lena didn't flinch. Maybe if we listened to the janitors sooner, we wouldn't need damage control. But then Dorian threw down another document. A signed witness statement. Someone had ratted Elias out. Lena scanned the page, one name underlined. Jonas Keller, head of the original ethics team. Her gut dropped. Elias had just stepped back into the light, and someone was already trying to throw him back into the dark. Jonas Keller had once been Elias's closest colleague. Back when the ethics division was just a whiteboard, 3 laptops, and a dream too fragile to survive bureaucracy. Elias remembered late nights in that windowless lab, arguing about code not as function but as philosophy. Jonas was brilliant, too brilliant. But his brilliance lacked patience. He wanted scalable empathy, profitable morality. Elias wanted hesitation, human messiness. And when the incident happened, when the prototype failed to interpret distress cues in a child's voice, Jonas blamed latency. Elias blamed himself. The fallout was swift. Jonas was promoted. Elias vanished. And now, years later, that same man had handed him to the wolves with a signature and a smirk. Lena confronted Jonas in the hallway outside the executive wing. "Why'd you report him?" she asked, tone deceptively calm. Jonas didn't break stride. "Because he's dangerous," he said. "You don't let a man with a loaded conscience near your source code." Lena stepped in front of him. "You're not afraid of Elias breaking the system. You're afraid he'll fix it better than you ever could." Jonas's face hardened. "I built this place while he was hiding behind a mop. I don't owe him anything." "No," Lena said, her voice like a fuse about to catch. "But maybe you owe the rest of us a conscience." She left him standing there, jaw tight, reputation intact, soul empty. Meanwhile, security was preparing to escort Elias offsite. 2 men in black approached the lower maintenance wing where he worked. But Tomas intercepted them with a mop in hand and a steel resolve in his voice. "You're not taking him like that," he said. They ignored him. Elias didn't. He stepped out from behind the tool cage, already holding his ID badge and locker key. "It's fine," he said quietly. "Let them do what they do. That's what machines are for." He handed over the items without resistance. As he was led down the hallway, he glanced once at the vent above where Maya had once hidden a crayon note for him. For Dad, because he makes everything clean again. He'd taped it inside his locker. They wouldn't find it, but he would remember. That night, Lena sat in her office with the lights off, staring at a blank email draft addressed to the board. She knew the protocol. Violations meant termination. But something about this felt wrong. Elias wasn't trying to sabotage them. He was trying to remind the system how to feel. And the fact that that was seen as a threat said more about them than him. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out the napkin again. It was smudged now, worn soft at the corners, but the words still hit like a heartbeat. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her blazer pocket, then picked up her phone and dialed the one person who wouldn't pretend to be neutral. Tomas, she asked. Where would Elias go if he had nowhere left to be? There was a pause, then a sigh. He'd go where no one listens. The old server room under Block C. Lena found him there, sitting alone on the raised floor, surrounded by decommissioned towers that blinked softly like forgotten stars. He looked up as she entered, surprised but not startled. They'll revoke your access for this, he said. Let them, she replied. They already revoked my faith weeks ago. She sat beside him, cross-legged, like it was the most natural thing in the world. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she pulled something from her pocket. Not the napkin and other paper. A schematic. This is your old empathy threading model, isn't it? She asked. The one with hesitation logic built into real-time protocols? Elias nodded. It was too slow, he said. By the time it thought about the right thing, the wrong thing had already happened. Maybe, Lena said softly. But maybe that pause is exactly what's missing. And then, out of the darkness, came a sound that didn't belong. A second set of footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Elias stood quickly. Lena followed. And in the doorway stood someone neither of them expected to see. Jonas Keller, holding a flash drive like a loaded gun. Jonas didn't speak at first. He just stood in the doorway like a storm held together by posture and pride, his hand wrapped around the flash drive like it might detonate if he let go. You shouldn't be here, he said, but the words were for Lena. Elias, he barely looked at. You came to destroy what's left of the project? Elias asked quietly. Jonas stepped forward. No, I came to stop you from doing it first. He tossed the drive onto the floor. That contains a patch your old framework initiated last night before security locked you out. Do you know what it did, Elias? It froze the entire empathy audit tree. Live. It stalled 6 evaluations in progress. Real-world data. Elias blinked. So it paused. Jonas snapped. It hesitated. You built indecision into a decision engine. You made a machine that doubts itself. Lena stepped between them. Maybe that's the point. We keep talking about teaching machines to be ethical, but we define ethics like it's just math. What Elias is building isn't indecision. It's humanity. Jonas scoffed. That kind of uncertainty gets people killed. You know what the market does to latency? Elias's voice cut in calm, steady. Do you know what the world does to people who aren't seen by your certainty? He took a breath. Sometimes the wrong thing done fast looks like success, but it leaves bodies. Silence followed, thick and electric. Then Jonas turned to Lena. If you back him, you go down with him. The board already wants blood. Lena didn't blink. Then maybe it's time they see who's actually bleeding. By the next morning, the internal leak had begun. Not from Elias, not from Lena, but from someone inside the engineering team who had gotten hold of a debug log running the pause threshold protocol. It showed a simulated drone choosing to delay its emergency delivery by 22 seconds because a child was visible in the crosspath, mourning at a roadside memorial. The AI had waited. The mother later wrote in, if that thing had flown over us like nothing, I don't think I'd be able to look at machines the same again. The comment went viral unintended, unstoppable. The world didn't just see data. They saw mercy, but the board saw headlines. Investors started calling. Lawsuits were mentioned. And once again, Elias was painted as the root of the mess. This time, not just by Jonas but by a full legal team. Lena was summoned into a private review session with the board's crisis committee. She knew the script deny knowledge, blame internal testing, promise oversight. Instead, she placed the napkin on the table and said, We've forgotten what we were trying to build. One of the board members leaned forward. You're defending janitor logic? Lena didn't blink. I'm defending consequence-aware logic. The kind we don't teach because it doesn't look good on performance charts. They stared at her like she was growing wings or horns. Maybe both. She knew this would be her last meeting as an executive. When she walked out, her assistant followed her silently to the elevator. Just before the doors closed, the assistant whispered, "I hope he keeps fighting." Lena didn't smile. She just whispered, "He's not done yet." That night, Elias didn't go home. He stood on the rooftop of the old research wing, looking out over the skyline that seemed colder, now more reflective, like glass trying to remember fire. Tomas found him there, carrying a folded coat and an envelope. "You're going to want to see this," the old man said. Inside the envelope were printouts, pages from his old project, dug up by someone anonymous, mailed to the facility under no return name. Notes, sketches, even a page Elias had written after Maya's mother died. Empathy isn't a feature. It's a mirror. Elias turned the last page and paused. Scrawled in pen, not his handwriting, were 4 new words. "Let it breathe again." He looked at Tomas. "Who sent this?" Tomas only shrugged. "Don't know, but I think it means someone out there still believes in what you were building." Just then, a message lit up on Elias's old work tablet, a secure channel he thought was deactivated years ago. It read, "Are you ready to finish what we started?" The message had no name, no sender ID, just a location ping and a time. Midnight. The address led to an abandoned community center once used for internal employee wellness programs before it was defunded and shuttered. Elias arrived just before the hour, expecting shadows. What he found instead was light, dim, but warm. Inside the main room stood 2 people. One he recognized instantly, Sarah Drexler, the former empathy module design analyst who had quit years ago under mysterious circumstances. The other, a young systems developer named Leon, still fresh in the company, known for his silence and strange empathy simulations no one had taken seriously. "We never stopped working," Sarah said before Elias could ask anything. "We just stopped waiting for permission." On the dusty floor between them was a server rig patched together with mismatched panels and handwritten labels. Elias crouched beside it. "Is this Echo?" he asked, breath tight. Leon nodded. "Echo restructured. We took your hesitation logic, but built something new on top. Delay pathways that respond to emotional cues in language tone, cadence, repetition. It listens like it's afraid to interrupt." Elias stared at the screen. The code was beautiful, not optimized, not clean, but deeply, unmistakably human. Sarah stepped forward. "The question isn't whether the machine can choose mercy. It's whether we're brave enough to let it." Elias felt something rise in his chest he hadn't let himself feel in years. Faith. But it was interrupted by the sound of tires screeching outside. The door burst open. Jonas stormed in, followed by 2 corporate security agents. "Step away from the terminal," he shouted. "This is unauthorized access of proprietary code." Elias stood slowly, shielding the machine. "You don't own what you buried," he said. "This isn't theft. It's resurrection." Jonas pointed at Sarah. "You're under NDA. 1 word of this gets out, and I'll make sure you never work again." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady. "You already did that when you chose to monetize fear instead of mitigate it." One of the security agents hesitated, glancing at Elias. "You're the guy from the leak," he muttered. Elias met his gaze. "I'm the guy who tried to stop another mistake before it happened. That's all." The second guard shifted uneasily. Jonas, red with rage, pulled out his phone. "I'm shutting this all down." But he didn't get the chance. At that exact moment, Lena's voice rang out from behind him. "That's enough, Jonas." She stepped into the room, coat damp from the rain, holding a thin manila folder. "Legal's already been notified. The board is launching an internal ethics review based on recent community impact leaks. If you move against him now, you're obstructing whistleblower protections." Jonas turned pale. "You think they'll believe a janitor?" Lena smiled faintly. "They already do. And so does the public." She tossed the folder on the floor. It slid open inside. Dozens of printed messages from ordinary people, teachers, nurses, even a paramedic, all saying the same thing. "Your pause saved something I didn't know I needed protected." Jonas stared at the pages, then at Elias, and for the first time, said nothing. That night, Elias walked home in the rain, Maya's tiny backpack slung over one shoulder. She had fallen asleep in the center's reading room while drawing with Leon's daughter. He'd wrapped her in his old hoodie, the one with the torn sleeve she always insisted smelled like thinking. When he reached their apartment, he tucked her into bed and sat beside her with a cup of cold tea. On the kitchen table lay the napkin, now laminated, thanks to Lena, and the original sketch from the Echo Project. He stared at both like they were parts of a puzzle only memory could solve. Then, with a tired exhale, he pulled out a pen and added one more sentence beneath the original 3. Kindness isn't code. It's courage in disguise. Just as he set the pen down, his phone buzzed. A message from Lena. Tomorrow. Public demo. You ready? Below it, one more line. They're watching. Make them feel it. The demo hall wasn't glamorous. No marble floors, no velvet ropes, just folding chairs, too much fluorescent light, and a podium that squeaked when touched. But the room was full, not with investors or executives, but with people. Community leaders, nonprofit workers, teachers. A woman who once emailed Lena after her son cried when a drone flew over his school. In the front row sat Maya, legs swinging beneath her seat, hugging a stuffed astronaut against her chest. Elias stood backstage, blazer rumpled, palms sweating slightly. Lena handed him a napkin, this time blank. Just in case you forget what to say, she smiled. Elias nodded. I never forget, he whispered. I just pause until I'm ready. When he walked on stage, there was no applause, just quiet expectation. He didn't clear his throat or thank anyone. He simply spoke. We built a machine that hesitates, not because it's broken, but because it understands that you might be. That grief doesn't fit in an equation. That the fastest answer is sometimes the coldest. What we showed it isn't logic. It's trust. And that begins with slowing down long enough to ask, who could this hurt? Behind him, the screen lit up with real-time empathy simulation scenarios where the system paused, waited, rerouted, not out of fear, but respect. A man stood up from the crowd. What happens when the system hesitates too long? Elias looked at him. Then we ask better questions. And if it still doesn't know what to do, it stops. Because not acting is sometimes more moral than pretending certainty. A murmur passed through the room, disbelief, then agreement. Then another voice. A young woman. So you're saying machines can feel? Elias shook his head. No, I'm saying they can listen. But it's still our voice they're listening to. He stepped aside. Lena joined him, standing tall. This isn't about creating moral machines, she said. It's about becoming moral people again. Later that evening, Elias sat on the rooftop of the new community lab. It wasn't funded by investors. It ran on grants and hope. Maya sat beside him, sketching a small robot holding a sign that read, Wait, someone's hurting. She handed it to him, grinning. Do you think machines will ever cry, Daddy? Elias wrapped an arm around her. I hope not, he said. But I hope they always wait long enough for us to. Lena stepped out holding 3 mugs of cocoa. They sat in silence, the kind that wasn't empty, but full. Full of breath, full of memory, full of moments where everything could have gone wrong but didn't. Weeks passed. The framework, dubbed the empathy layer, was adopted by several aid organizations, then by a school system, then by a refugee program. Slowly, word spread. Not about Elias or Lena, but about a line of code that waited when it didn't know and changed lives because of it. The board at the old company made statements, hired PR firms. They tried to own the story, but the story had already left them behind. One day, a reporter asked Elias, what would you call your legacy? He looked at Maya, then at Lena, then said simply, clean floors, clear hearts, and a machine that pauses long enough for kindness to catch up. That night, after dinner and laughter, after Maya fell asleep mid-sentence, Lena handed Elias a box. Inside, a ring. Not gold, not flashy, just brushed steel, engraved with 3 small words, pause, empathize, begin. Elias looked at her, startled. This is usually the part where I propose, he smiled. Lena leaned in. You already did. The day you handed me that napkin. He closed the box gently. Then, without fanfare, he took her hand. And they stood there, 2 people who had rewritten more than code. They had rewritten what it meant to be heard in a world full of noise. Not perfect, but brave. Not fast, but true. And sometimes, that's how humanity survives. Not by rushing forward, but by remembering when to stop.